There are two parts of this exercise. Part 1 is normalization. We will go through the normalization together. Part 2 is about creating a complete entity relationship diagram in your design tool. That's your assignment. Here is the design document for our exercise. We are designing a patient referral database and a patient referral system. We will use the closed foot notation. We will refine our design to the third normal form. Pay very close attention to the business rules. We use the business rules to enforce the data integrity and to ensure the business requirements are met. On the right, we have the unnormalized form, or UNF, which we will use to begin the normalization process. Now we are ready to take our UNF to the first. Going from UNF to the first normal form, there are 4 techniques we need to apply. Do we have any composite attribute? Do we have any multi-valued attribute? Do we have any repeating group? Or do we have any many-to-many relationship? If we have any of these issues, we need to correct it. Look at our UNF very closely to see whether there's any issue related to going from UNF to the first. Pay attention to, in our UNF, the primary key is the referring doctor ID. We have several composite attributes. We also have repeating groups. We need to correct these issues in our UNF. Think about how we can correct them. We corrected the composite attributes by splitting them into atomic attributes. We corrected the repeating group issue by creating a new entity, thus referring doctor. Since we just made some changes to our design and the normalization process is iterative and repetitive, therefore, we need to go back to the very beginning of the design process to make sure when we corrected some issues, we did not unintentionally introduce some others. And we can verify that this design conforms to the first normal form. Now we are ready to take our design from the first normal form to the second normal form. Going from the first normal form to the second normal form, there is just one technique we need to apply. Do we have any partial dependency? Look at our design. Check whether we have any partial dependency. Just a hint, if an entity does not have a composite primary key, then that entity will not have any partial dependency. In our design, we have patient referral, which has a composite primary key. Therefore, we need to check whether there is any partial dependency in there. we have two partial dependencies there, and we need to correct them. Think about how we correct them. We created two new entities, patient and specialist, to correct the partial dependency, and also make sure we pay attention to the primary key of each entity. We have confirmed our design conformed to the second normal form, and now we're ready to take our design from the second normal form to the third normal form. Going from the second to the third, there's just one technique we need to apply. Do we have any transitive dependency? Take a close look at our design. See whether you see any transitive dependency. Just a reminder, with the cross-foot notation, the primary key attributes are marked by an asterisk. We have two transitive dependencies in our design, and we need to correct them. Think about how we can correct them. We created two new entities, department and specialty, to correct the transitive dependencies. Because the normalization process is iterative and repetitive, we just made some changes. Therefore, we need to go back to the very beginning of the normalization process to make sure our design conforms to the first normal form. And we saw an issue related to going from UNF to the first. We have a many-to-many relationship between specialist and specialty. Keep in mind, in the design document, it's mentioned a specialist may have several specialties, and obviously a specialty may be related to multiple specialists. Think about how we correct this many-to-many relationship. We created a new associative entity between specialist and specialty to correct the many-to-many relationship. Now, we go back to the very beginning of the normalization process. We can verify our design conforms to the first normal form, the second normal form, and the third normal form. We're done with normalization. Lastly, we are going to do some cleanup. Specialty list ID and specialist ID have the same data. We are going to change specialty list ID to specialist ID so that we have consistent attribute names. We will also remove specialty ID from special list. We don't need it in here. We're done with cleanup, and we're also done with part 1. Now let's talk about your assignment. We want to create a complete entity relationship diagram in your design tool. Do not add any new entity or any new attribute. We want to establish relationships between entities. When we establish relationships, pay very close attention to multiplicity. Multiplicity is about cardinality and participation. We use multiplicity to enforce the business rules. We also want to pay attention to the type of a relationship. Is it identifying or is it non-identifying? We want to avoid unnecessary relationships. Unnecessary relationships clutter our design. They also degrade the performance of our database and application. Lastly, let's make sure we label all primary keys and foreign keys. This is the end of our discussion.